Brutal winter conditions froze progress in the housing market. But now a new threat looms on the horizon. Today's housing data is quite revealing. We're going to take you through it step by step. Earlier today was reported housing starts rising at a rate of 1.5 million. This is reported in thousands. That's better than last month's 1.35 and the second best number we've seen in several years, actually. Conversely, building permits are declining, now at a rate of 1.4 million. That's the worst number in the past 4 months. We're going to explain to you exactly what the difference is between housing starts and building permits and why this divergence is so important to make note of. In terms of the housing market cycle, well, it all begins with the building permits. That's the permission to start a housing project. Once we get the building permit, that eventually turns into a housing start. That's more of an official start of the housing project, the construction. That eventually turns into inventory when the house is complete. And eventually that translates into new home sales. So the building permits is really the first stage of the entire cycle. On Market Watch today, they say home builders are expected to slow down, and that's bad news for America's massive housing shortage. They report in particular, construction of new homes rose 11.2% in February as builders coming off a harsh winter ramped up projects. Furthermore, builders accelerated the construction of new homes following a tough winter when many had to halt work. But with tariff concerns continuing to weigh on home builders' confidence, a slowdown in construction looks likely in the second half of the year. Let's take another look at the housing market cycle from a different point of view. This is what's happening now. Last year, spring to fall, well, we had pretty steady pace of construction. That was good. Then we had a very cold winter. Housing projects had to cease or at least slow down quite a bit. Well, now they're trying to make up for lost time. Now we see a surge in demand and a surge in construction, especially on the beginning, the housing starts cycle. But we face the threat of tariffs looming right around the corner, which could halt once again construction in the housing market. So we have the dichotomy here where housing starts are rising, but building permits are falling. Remember, building permits, that's the first stage, the permission before we actually start the housing project. Well, looking at our housing market again, remember, building permits is the first stage. So if building permits slows down, which it looks like it is, it's slowing down below housing starts, that could affect the entire chain. Here we see in blue building permits, in yellow housing starts. Building permits are slowing. Again, that's the first step. That's the permission. While housing starts, they're ramping up, possibly because the home builders are really trying to make up for lost time because of the cold winter. This is the first time, well, last couple months also, but the first time in quite a while that we're now seeing housing starts exceed building permits. If housing starts is a leading indicator to new home sales, building permits is a leading indicator to the housing starts. Now, how do we translate the economics into an actual investment? We look back in time to get some reference. This is 2006 through 10. And notice in particular, left-hand side, building permits, right-hand side, Lennar, a very common home builder. And notice what happened. January of '07, we already had a precipitous drop. That was around 1.6 million building permits, not too far from where we are now. Well, exactly the same period of time, we saw that little spike in Lennar stock, but eventually led to a precipitous drop. And that's really why it's so important to watch building permits and housing starts, because they act as a leading indicator to the rest of the housing market. If they slow down, housing projects eventually slow down, and then, of course, we could expect prices to rise, or maybe they're slowing down. Maybe that's indicative of a long-term trend to the downside. Speaking of economic numbers, we have more this week. Wednesday, Federal Open Market Committee rate decision. That's a big day. Followed by Thursday, Philly Fed, existing homes. We hope this has been helpful. We look forward to seeing you back soon.